welcome. I'm Suzanne Siracuse, the CEO of Suzanne Siracuse Consulting Services. I am so excited to be a part of and lead the discussion around this three-part webcast series entitled Connecting, Communicating, Leading, and Learning Through Crisis. I want to thank my partner, Tegra 118, for helping to advance this discussion and bring it to life. Joining me for this three-part webcast series is Cheryl Nash, the CEO of Tegra 118. And today, our special industry guest, Burt White, Chief Investment Officer of LPL Financial Services. Thank you, Cheryl, for leading this initiative, and Burt, for joining us today to provide us with your expertise, your guidance, and of course, that fabulous personality of yours. The last few months have been truly unprecedented, a global pandemic that has created a new reality for us all. Health risks, volatile market conditions, rising unemployment, couple that with homeschooling and remote working, sometimes it just seems completely overwhelming. But in many cases, it's in times like these in which innovation is at its best. New ways of thinking are abundant, much due to necessity, but still around advancing and driving us forward. So I thought I would be able to kick off our call today with discussing what is actually happening right now in our world. And how has COVID-19 accelerated what's happening, not just in our industry, but in our business and driving and moving us forward. Burt, I'd love for you to kick this off for us.
All right, it's great to be here. I got to tell you what, I miss you guys. We've been socially distant for too long, and so we're putting an end to that right now, which is great. Maybe before I jump into that question, let me just say this. I think that for those of us that are fortunate enough to have our health, fortunate enough to have our jobs, frankly, it's a lot more than just hunkering down. You know, I believe that we have a responsibility to do a lot more than just get by. We're not just waiting this thing out. We actually have an obligation to actually see this crisis as a stepping stone to transform us to a better society, to us being better business leaders, to us being better people, for me being a better parent. Sorry, I'll get off the soapbox here. I think there
Amen. I love what you just said.
All right, amen. So I think there are tons of stuff, Suzanne. I mean, first of all, I'd say that, look, everything is escalating to a more digital environment. The more meet you where you are. We've been on that for a while. And clearly that's continuing. It's going to be escalated through this. Insights being delivered by data is more important. AI, machine learning has also been accelerated through this. But I'd highlight two things. The first thing I'd highlight is adoption is the new innovation. Let's face it, a lot of these new technologies, they're not new. We've had them for decades. Video conferencing been forever. The problem is we haven't always adopted them. And sometimes it takes time to get that. My mom used to say there's two reasons why people change. They become enlightened enough that they want to, or they hurt enough that they have to. And this is hurting enough that we have to. And people are having to adopt new technology today. And it's going to bring on new users to old technology that's new to them, but also new use cases for how we use technology. And then lastly is there's just new expectations of being always on. And this is the one thing I want to be careful about, because the world usually has stopping mechanisms. You watch a TV show, it's got an end after 60 minutes. Or when we go to work, at the end of the day, a whistle blows and we jump in the car and commute home. But not when we bring work to home. And so therefore, we got to be careful about making sure we have these stopping mechanisms, or else we're going to work 24/7.
Yeah, I am so glad that you brought that up, and thank you for that. And your mom should do some writing, by the way. I was just talking to somebody about that exact thing where, usually you go into the office, you come home, there's a separation between your work life and your personal life. These are blending together more than ever before. And you're seeing people get up and work from 6 in. They're on calls at 10 at night. I know we're probably going to address this later, but it's may lead to employee burnout. And how do our businesses and our leaders really address that? So I'm so glad that you brought that up in the first question. Cheryl, how about you? What are you seeing? What do you think's really accelerated? And what are some of the things that you're seeing at your firm that you're instituting?
Yeah, same as Burt. Adoption is a new innovation. Completely agree with that. Look at, we're all on a Zoom or whatever conference type calls we're on. As Burt said, these have been available forever, but now we're really learning them and using them and actually embracing them. But to me, it's really amazing. One day we were in the office. This was March 11th. The next day we had 480 people working remotely. We were able to make that shift easily, but we didn't plan really for what that means and what that meant, especially when you think about on 24 hours, bringing your kids' schoolwork into your life. There's so many changes out there. So it's really made us, as a technology company, review many of our processes, review our communication vehicles and protocols, review how we check in with our teammates. For those who know me, I am really a people person. I love to be surrounded by people. So this has been a big adjustment for me. But we've been able to make it work, and we have adopted new technologies. Video conferencing is big, although, as Burt said, it's really starting to show some real fatigue, because if you're on a conference call all day long, you're always on, and it's really showing fatigue in some people. But I think we're going to have to figure out how to get around that. I've always said, and I'm saying this to my team more than ever, it's so important right now that you give yourself flexibility, you give yourself even permission to turn that computer off, to go grab a yogurt, to go grab a sandwich. And I think, that you're always on this new world that we're in. People are afraid to do that. It's also made us rethink how we communicate. So I have 8:30 a.m. daily standing calls with my team. I do miss when they come in my office, sit down with a cup of coffee, and we'd be able to just chit chat. But we've been able to figure out a way to do that, which is not as personal, but at least we get to see each other's faces. And we're also enabling them. Sometimes my head of HR, her 4-year-old daughter, will sit on her lap as we're having these conversations. But it's all about flexibility. But we do have to think about digital. We do have to think about what needs to change. We have to think about what comes out on the other side of this. And it's all around automation, integration, all those things that Burt and I know really well, that we've been talking about for so long. We now have to put those into practice, because it's, sometimes it's a good, you're forced to do it. But I think we're now ready to figure out how to get all that done. And then just one other thing, I'll never forget when I first met Burt. He was at an MMI conference, and I think he was at Wachovia at the time. He went on stage. He had a pack of paper this big, and he started talking about financial planning, and he literally threw that paper on the ground and said, "Who looks at this? Who looks at all this paper?" And I'm telling you, we're still in that same place. I was on a call not too long ago, and we were still talking about how do you get a more simplistic plan. And I think now more than ever, we're going to need this as we come out of this. But I always remember that of Burt. I think everybody jumped, but it also woke everybody up. And I think now we're at the point where we can put that into practice.
Fabulous, Cheryl. Thank you. That was so insightful and spot on, in my opinion. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about what are some of the programs or the policies that your firms have instituted for advisors since this crisis that's been really well received. Burt, what are you doing in terms of new things that the advisors seem to love at LPL?
Well, we've had a ton. What I would say is that in this environment, you got to double down on the basics. Everyone wants to try to add the bells and whistles and the brand new stuff. But remember, it's harder to open accounts now than it was. It's harder to get people on the phone than it was before. The basics is actually harder to do. And so you got to double down on those. So for example, service is more an asset now than ever before. So we extended service hours. We made it so that we were open in the evenings. We made it so we're open on the weekends for our advisors, because we know they're juggling so much, trying to not only take care of their clients, but also their families and educate the kids and everything else. And so they play such a critical role. We do that. But we've also added a bunch of other things. And I maybe highlight two big themes. The first one is we're accelerating this work from home tools. They're really going to help advisors differentiate and serve clients in this new normal. They're not going to be sitting across the mahogany desk from you anymore. So we've got to deliver more things like expand our e-signature programs. That's been really huge, so that you could take the whole wet signature thing just right off the table. obviously video conferencing, virtual calendaring, inter-office IM for advisors are all really important things to be able to stay in contact. And I think
Do
the
you
second
think that
thing,
more advisors are starting to adopt those? So you've had them, right? But it's always the problem is the cart before the horse. You need the advisors to adopt them. Are you seeing now, because they're kind of forced to do it, that it's accelerating the adoption rate?
absolutely. You are absolutely seeing advisors begin to jump in with both feet. Again, back to what we said before, you either want to change or you have to change. And the have to change is pretty powerful, right? And right now the have to change is there. And the other have to change is that you have to be able to change in how you interface with your clients. Again, they're not going to swing by your office and sit behind the mahogany desk with you. And so, our mobile apps, compliant texting, pre-approved ghost written letters to help them be able to get those out quickly, all are really important things. But also onboarding advisors remotely. We used to send folks to go and help advisors onboard and get ready to join LPL and be ready to learn all those things. And now what we're doing is giving them a dedicated screen that's always on, connected to someone, so that if you ever need one, you just reach over and say, hey, Lucy, hey, Tom, I got a question for you. And they're always there waiting for you as if they're sitting next to you. They're just on a screen. All really neat things in this new world.
That's fantastic and so needed. So Cheryl, what about you? What are some of the programs or policies that you've instituted for your team that seem to be really resonating now that maybe you're going to keep even when you are not working remotely all the time?
Yeah, great question, Suzanne. So first and foremost, what we're instituting and what we're looking for is making sure that the teammates are safe, that they're well. All the systems that we're using are secure. We're upholding all security protocols when sending documents. I mean, we're doing much more through DocuSign and document sharing, and even putting live documents on video conferences. So making sure all of that is secure. We're relying on more and more technology with digital options to really reach and connect with our clients and with our colleagues and our teammates. What we're learning, and this is a great example of that, you need high quality digital content that captures and maintains the attentions of all the audiences, whether it's an internal audience, whether we're doing a town hall in front of 480 people, or whether it's external like we're doing today. We're also doing digital road shows with our clients, more virtual type things than we did. We had, as we were recently spun out into a joint venture. We had a lot of plans of going face-to-face with clients, introducing them to our new partners. We're now doing that, digitally with conferences like this. But what this requires is great visual and audio experiences. We've put some new training in place. We've trained all of our client-facing team to be able to have a conversation like this, and how to sit up and what your background should look like, and all those things that I think are important. And really want to make sure that what we say is engaging, and you can't sit on video all day and just keep listening to like blah blah. You have to really make sure you've got some really good information you're sharing. Another thing that we've learned is you serve up content in bite-sized, digestible pieces. Don't spend 2-3 hours trying to get the points or have webinars that long. It's really easier to do it in these smaller bite-sized pieces, and then it gives your teammates the flexibility they might need. And then lastly, I think as everybody's going virtual, a lot of the conferences we've attended are, the conferences that we're participating in are virtual. We're now planning our first ever annual virtual conference as Tegra 118, and we're going to be sending more information out about that, but it's all how you do these things, how you make sure they're compelling, they're interesting, and they're engaging. So I think that's a lot of learning that we've got, and we're taking into consideration as we're doing more and more of this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One question that I want to ask, throw to both of you is travel and conferences, right? So there's a lot of companies out there that are having mini heart attacks about there not being as many live conferences anymore because they are significant revenue generation opportunities for them. What do you think is going to happen to the conference business? You both hold and throw large conferences. You both support and spend at a lot of large conferences. Burt, what is that going to do to your conference budget for next year? How would you potentially redeploy those resources? And then the same thing for Cheryl. So Burt, I'd love to hear, I'm sure a lot of people that are listening would like to hear the answer to this.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what next year holds because I'm not even sure what next week holds. But I will say for this year, we're not going to be having big conferences together, and we're not going to do that. I think the biggest point on these is that can you end up thinking about these conferences to help you be able to generate and do things that, frankly, you never were able to do with 7,000 people in a room. Like, for example, if you were having a cooking show and you wanted someone to cook along with you, you couldn't do that with 7,000 people in the room. But you can do it if you're distributed and you make sure everybody has an ingredient and you can actually have a really interactive cooking show with them, right? And so how do we take that level of mentality and bring it to our industry, our events, to be able to do things that we've never been able to do when we have 7,000 people at Focus, but still be even that much more engaging, interactive, educational. And I think there's ways to do it. It just requires A, a lot of technology, but B, creativity. We're going to have to be a lot more creative. This is not about just taking our old conferences and doing them online. You're going to have to do completely new interactions online. And if we do them right, we can do some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And that whole personalization and customization that we talk about in the client experience around technology is translating exactly this to the conference. And this is where innovation, as I mentioned in the opening, innovation is at its best. Cheryl, what about you guys? You also throw a large conference, you attend a lot of conferences. How do you see the kind of the new normal translating into what the conference business is going to look like for our industry?
Yeah, I'm with Burt that we're playing it, by ear, especially, for next year. This year, I don't see us hopping on planes. I don't see that as essential travel to put people in danger. So I know a lot of conferences are wondering what's going to happen in October, November, December, where a lot of people either move their conference to then or have their second conferences. But there's a lot of great things happening. I mean, Burt and I sit on the MMI board together, and they've done a really good, Craig Pfeiffer has actually done breakout meetings via Zoom, where you can go into breakout meetings and have some smaller, breakout sessions on key topics. So we're going to see more and more of that come into play, I think. And I think from a travel budget perspective and from all of those things that, we spend a tremendous amount of money on travel and on conferences. And if you think about that, what's the return on investment? You might be able to do the same thing like we're doing now. But it'll be, 2021 is going to be, I think, really going to pave the way for what the rest looks like. I think 2020, we already know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, great points. And again, there's so many variables that it's really hard for us to know what's next, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen next. And that's, I think, the hard part for so many in this industry that want to advance and keep going. We almost have to sit and wait a little bit and observe and see what happens. But I think there are some great examples of how you can take a large conference and actually make it more interesting by doing it virtually, by customizing it and making it more personal for each attendee. So I want to switch gears and I want to talk a little bit about the global economy and the market outlook for what's going on in the world. So Burt, this is right in your wheelhouse. So I'd love for you to kind of give us a little bit of a snapshot on the global outlook and how that is going to affect our industry, the wealth management industry.
I have no idea. I have absolutely, positively no idea. In all seriousness, I've never seen a time where the market and the economy has been more disconnected. We see terrible economic news. 39 million Americans have filed for initial unemployment claims. We've had record low retail sales numbers. Yet the market, after dropping 34%, the fastest bear market ever, has recovered 32%. In the last 40 days, the second strongest 40 days we've ever seen. So maybe just three quick points on the market. Number one is, like COVID, the illness, the healthier you are before you get it, the better the chance and the quicker you can recover. And the same is true with our economy. And while we definitely hit a tree, no doubt about that, we did so with one of the strongest economies we could have asked for. That means a quicker recovery potentially. The second thing is markets are forward-looking. They're not looking at the day-to-day. They don't care about that. It's looking 6 months, it's a year out, 2 years out. And one of my favorite things to look at is small businesses. And remember, small businesses is 97% of all the businesses in the United States. They employ about half of all Americans, and they're the lifeblood of this economy and of this country. And the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index, while it dropped in the last reading for April, its forward-looking component, what's going to happen 6 months from now, hit an 18-month high. It's the highest in a year and a half. And that's telling you that small business owners are beginning to see some pent-up demand and some optimism that's not super far out, that's 6 months out. And you're starting to see that now. Whether it be store traffic in retail sales, they're up 30% over the last couple of weeks, or Open Table is actually starting to show restaurant reservation bookings, or TSA is now showing about a 10 or 20% increase in the amount of travelers. And so that's beginning to show. Third piece is the bottom line is that this is not just an economic recession. This is a human crisis and a confidence recession. And the way we're going to get out of this is four things. Like, we got to have consumers confident enough to buy. We got to have businesses confident enough to hire. You have to have investors confident enough to save. And you have to have families confident enough they're going to be safe. And when all those things happen, that's when we'll be completely out of this. And the reality is there's going to be some bumpy roads along the way. But I do think we've seen the lows of this market. I don't think we're going to see any lower than what we saw a while ago. We'll have some bumps along the way, but I think a year from now, we'll be at or near all-time highs on the other end of this, and with lots of changes along the way.
That's great. Great points. Thanks for putting those in chunk-sized pieces for us. And you're right. I agree. I mean, think about what happened in 2008, 2009, and how really quickly the market recovered from that. So history tends to repeat itself. So I hope you're right. From a global standpoint, Cheryl, Tegra 118 employs a lot of tech experts that are all around the globe. How has this crisis changed from a global perspective how you are interacting with them?
That's a great question. So, as you know, we closed on a new joint venture about 3 months ago. And in doing that, there's been a tremendous amount of focus on technology, especially within our organization, especially with what our clients are asking for and needing right now. So not only are we working on the client requests, doing our roadmap work like we always do, but we're also transforming our technology organization. And we've got technology folks in India. We've got technology folks in California and New Jersey. So they are, in London, we've got technology folks. So we're really looking at that. And, we've been able to work very well with them because of, the technology. Unfortunately, India, we didn't have any bumps in the road there with our teams. They're our own teams. So we're able to give them laptops so they can work from home. But our goal right now is to look at that technology organization, figure out how we can be more nimble, how we can be more collaborative, how we can be more forward thinking. And it's a good time to do that because in the midst of all this, we're a new company. We're a proud new company. We've got new support from Motive Partners, and we're really trying to figure out what the best things are for us to do and move forward. And it's really important that, when you're going through a crisis like this, that you take the opportunity to, look at what you do and make any changes that are necessary. I know that with global teams and teams all over the country, it's really important to, send out frequent, constant, consistent communication, have extra focus on our operations, on the people, making sure they can actually work from home, making sure systems remain stable. So it's technology is obviously a big focus of ours because that's what we do every day, but we've been able to make it work. And at the same time, we're looking at how we transform to be even better when we come out of the other side of this crisis.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I especially love the focus on communication. Consistent and constant communication coupled with technology is really like the holy grail right now to how you need to be working in a global environment. So several months have passed since the crisis emerged, right? And there was a time period where everyone was just rebooting and making sure everyone was okay and figuring out your operations. I think the advice industry pivoted very quickly, and for the most part has done an amazing job, really amazing job. And there were a lot of people that were like, we're not going to do any business development for a while because it was just not the right tone, right? But now, business does need to go on. Now people are kind of feeling more comfortable about where they are. So Burt, I'd love to get your input on, how has LPL rethought the way they communicate to advisors, and is it working? What kind of opportunities are coming out of this?
Well, advisors are busier, like all of us, than they've ever been before. And let's face it, everyone is flooding our emails and our social channels with more and more stuff. I like to call it the digital traffic jam. I'm not a big fan of jam. I like jellies. We'll call it the digital traffic. And so, we're over communicating, and that's always great. But, if an email is sent in the woods and no one reads it, then I don't know if it's sent. And so I think you got to think about communications differently, and we're certainly doing this with our advisors. And I'd highlight a couple things. Number one is we're trying to do more in-context communications. So put communications where they're needed to be seen. So if you have enhancements to, say, a new account opening system, don't just send an email about it. What you need to do is have a notice pop up when they're opening a new account and say, hey, listen, we have some new stuff here. Would you like to see it? And the reality is, do that in context, because that delivers the right message at the right time to the right advisor when they need it. The second thing is, you got to shift to video. I mean, I can't tell you, I can't look at the screen anymore. I can't read anymore. I want to see 30-second briefing or a 15-minute podcast and be able to learn those things quickly with real spikes of attention. And I think lastly is, you got to begin to bundle things together into more campaigns. What we're doing is we're now beginning to take smaller pieces and bundle them thematically into a campaign. We just recently did one that we call Unleashing Your Inner Thrivalist. So helping advisors move from thinking about just surviving to thriving in this market, where we combine things like texting and calendaring and IM and apps and a bunch of other tools and put them all together and said, here are all the tools you need to do that. And these campaigns allow for a bigger one-time hit that allows you to get a bang for your buck, as opposed to hitting advisors with 35 different emails and just hoping they can read all of them if as busy as they are.
Right, that's great, super smart, because you're right, everybody is getting inundated. How do you create themes and chunks of the same kind of content or the same type of tools and make it a process? So that's great, that's great advice. So Cheryl, you alluded to it earlier, and I want to delve a little bit deeper into this. You had a really interesting, and I'm going to say challenge. You were able to, congratulations, successfully take the investment services division of Fiserv, complete a majority interest acquisition, and go and join Motive Partners, and reposition and rebrand. That all happened a month before this crisis. And so your entire branding campaign was supposed to happen, or did happen, or was happening, or still is happening during this process. That has got to make you completely pivot what you were originally planning. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that must have been like going through that at this particular time with a global pandemic on our hands?
Yeah, so very interesting, I'd say, and great learnings. I mean, we've learned so much, but we closed on February 18th. We announced to the industry on February 19th that we had a new name. At that point, we didn't have our logo. We didn't really have our messaging and our branding down, but we were meant to kick that off at some big conferences that were happening in the next couple months. So when those conferences actually canceled, we had to, pivot and really make sure that we were creative, that we figured, we could figure out how to get our message out there. We still were able to work with some of the conferences like MMI and still put some video and some discussions out there about our new brand, our new name, our new mission. We've been able to have client roadshows virtually to tell our clients about what's going to stay the same, most importantly, what's going to change. But it's, and I'd say in, a week's time, we knew we had to make some real changes. And social media has been phenomenal. We're out on all of the social media channels, and we've put, we have a new social media handle, which is Tegra118. We have seen an incredible amount of folks, joining into that and really reading that and celebrating that with us. But, it's a great time for us, not because we're not out in person, but it's a great time for us because we are taking advantage of all these video channels. More and more people are online than ever before looking at things, and they want to see things that are new. And then just things like this, where we can talk about some of the things that we're doing. We can, partner with our clients and talk about, how we're, set up to succeed in a crisis like this, but more importantly, what we're going to do at the other end of it. But yeah, you're right, Suzanne. We think about, the day we closed and thought about our plan and, everything that we were going to do and how that had to, we really had to pivot quickly and not stop any of the momentum that we had planned. And I would say our marketing team has done a phenomenal job really partnering with industry luminaries like yourself to help us get our message out there. So it's been a really interesting learning experience. And, we treat everything with, we really try to be more authentic. Integra 118 is integrity, empathy for what people are going through. And we've been able to do that through forums like this. But you're right, it's been a very interesting time. And I will tell you, I write down every day something new that I've learned at the end of the day through this crisis. And I want to write a book one day, because we went from a big company to a smaller JV to, all these things that we're doing, and it's been pretty phenomenal. And we've been able to do it. And so far, so good. And I think we're going to all learn a lot through this.
Yeah, that's great. Again, congratulations. It's hard enough dealing with what's going on, and then to actually be into an entirely new company, launching a new company at the same time. It seems just overwhelming, but you guys have done a great job. I think what you're doing is fantastic. There's a couple themes that I just want to stop for a second to say that have come out of this conversation. I've been thinking about what are the words that we've been using a lot, and their creativity. So I always thought, I knew technology was going to be one of the words. I knew innovation was going to be one of the words. I knew communication was going to be one of the words, but one of my favorite skill sets and favorite words is creativity. And I think that marrying innovation, creative mindset, and technology is really what is driving us forward and actually creating an exciting time for businesses and people that work within those businesses, and especially on our industry. I'd love to kind of now dovetail onto that conversation, which is, in your opinions, what has been so far the biggest innovation or biggest pivot that you've seen from firms during this crisis? Burt, let's go to you on this.
Well, I always get to go first, which is really exciting.
You do. You know what? Next time I'm gonna change it up.
Change it up. I better be ready.
Yeah, you better be ready, Cheryl. Okay, so look, there's been so many. I couldn't agree with you more. This piece about creativity is really the new superpower. So I would just say a couple things.
That should be a T-shirt. That should be your T-shirt. Creativity is the new superpower. I think we have to brand that somehow. Speaking of marketing,
we're going to do it. I'm going to do T-shirts while Cheryl writes a book, and then together we'll open a new store.
I love it. We're going to open a new store online, digital, like Amazon, but better.
Amazon, but better. Yeah. I don't know. So gosh, there's so much here. I would say a couple of things which I find really fascinating. One is that it's amazing how many businesses are now beginning to collaborate more and getting customers to help them do part of the work that they did with them before. Here's what I mean by that. Think about how airlines actually get us to clean up our workstation and our seats before we land. They tell us, hey, would you please clean yourself? Like we're doing their work for them. Or think about how a movie theater says, hey, silence your phone, we're doing the work for them. And so there's been this trend in our industry to begin to say, let me do all the work for you. But now in this new world, you're starting to see companies pivot to begin to say, let's do the work together. Let me give you a great example of that is restaurants. Restaurants have shifted to curbside and takeout and all that stuff, and that's all been talked about. But I actually think there's a bigger pivot. And this is how they've unbundled their offering and getting customers to actually help them. Think about how restaurants have shifted to almost being like grocery stores. Ruth's Chris, Del Frisco's are now selling packs of their steaks, their seasonings, their sides, so that you can cook it at home. Essentially, they're a grocery store, and you do the cooking for Del Frisco's, and you're doing it at home. And so they're partnering with their clients to have them do the cooking in exchange for their amazing ingredients. And it's more than just this. Barbers are now selling really great clippers so that you can cut your hair at home, and plumbers are using their vans to deliver stuff to your house. And so people are breaking the supply chain, unbundling it, and then partnering. And to me, that's one of the real interesting parts of this is getting customers to begin to do some things that you do part of their work for them. But maybe more importantly, they're unbundling services and beginning to deliver parts of their service throughout the ecosystem, which is a really interesting and creative pivot.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Again, marrying creativity and quite frankly, a lot of the things that you just talked about is exactly what technology does too. Technology enables, right, there to be a sharing of responsibility. So I love that, and I still think we need to get a T-shirt or hashtag or something that we're going to work on there. Cheryl, how about you? What are some of the things that have really even just personally that you just find so intriguing?
Well, what Burt just said is amazing. And what's more amazing is how fast it all changed. It didn't take long for your favorite restaurant to be able to do curbside pickup and those types of things. So it truly is amazing how quickly people pivoted in this new world. But I think, and I recently heard this, that 5 years of digital progress was accomplished in 2 months. And when you think about that, what we're doing right now via video, and you think about client onboarding and more automation and more efficient planning and things like that, we have to do things better. And to the point of you can't do it by yourself. One of the things Motive is bringing to us, and what they're really good at, is co-creating with clients. So we're putting a lab together. We're going to be co-creating the feature with our clients, and that's what's really exciting to me. And we can do this. First we thought we had to do it in person. Now we're trying to figure out how to do it via digital, videos. But I think that's really important. And then I also recently heard, never waste a good crisis to make real and substantial change. So one of the things too, and I think that's what all these industries are doing, airline, hotel. I saw a thing on TV this morning about the hotel industry and how they're trying to change people's feelings about coming in with, how they're cleaning the hotel rooms, how they're having, even curbside room service and things like that. But I think there's a lot going on right now that we can learn from. And personally, it took a little while, at least for my family and I, we didn't go out of the house for a while because we were scared. Now we go out, obviously, with our masks and all, and now we'll even do curbside pickup from our favorite restaurant, trying to get a little bit more back into things and really help the economy. Or help our favorite restaurants. But a lot of that is really interesting to me. When I think about this and I think about how fast everything changed in one day and how fast our entire world changed along with it, you couldn't have done it without technology. And I think it's just, making all of us better.
Those are great examples. I have one more kind of interesting one that from retail perspective, right? So you think about who's going online and buying, work clothes or, dresses for weddings or whatever. Nobody's spring clothes, Easter clothes, nobody did that. So how are these high-end retailers trying to make up for something that's going to be a season that they completely missed? And so I was online the other day and I saw a designer with designer masks. So now all of a sudden, the fact that you are required in most states to wear some kind of mask. How do you capitalize on that when your business is retail? And so just something as simple as that, it's just capitalizing in on an opportunity that presents itself. And I think if that's what our industry can think of and use this creativity and technology and innovation and communication and blend it all together, we're going to come out of this so much stronger. So with that, I would love to get from both of you what you think the single most important or interesting thing that has come out of this crisis. So I'm going to start with Cheryl, since I promised Burt last time that he would go second.
So I think the single most interesting thing coming out of the crisis is around really understanding what's important in your life and making sure that those things that aren't important, but in the past you thought were, that you actually shed. And I think that's one of the most important things. When you think about it, and this is also something that you see on social media a lot. When you go back to normal and you go back to the way things were, make sure you don't bring the bad habits or the bad things with you. Make sure everything you've learned through this, goes forward with you. So I think we're going to have, there's more time with family. I mean, I was talking to one of my teammates, and she was really excited. Every night she has dinner with her family. She's like, I haven't had dinner with my family every single night in 15 years. And I think about that too. And it's actually been fun, sitting at the dinner table, having dinner with your family every night. So I hope we don't lose those types of things that we've been able to do and forced to do because of this crisis. I hope we're able to keep some of that going, because it is very meaningful. And I think we kind of all got away from that. So that would be where I would, really hope, is that the family aspect and our personal lives, that balance that everybody's been trying to talk to or trying to do. We've seen it, we've seen ourselves been able to do that, even though we're working longer hours, but let's keep that going. That would be my hope here.
I love that. I think the universe has a way of involving itself when it sees things getting a little bit too out of control.
Yes.
Burt, how about you?
I don't ever want to go second behind Cheryl again because she always takes all my answers. And so first from now on, so I changed my mind. No. So, the headline that's making its right way around work from home is how it's going to transform the employee and employer relationship, and it will. But here's what's been really showcased to me is that work from home doesn't mean working alone. And the reality is that this crisis really has proven a couple things. One is that the greatest competitive advantage of America is our resilience. That's the first thing it's proven. And the second thing that it's proven is that the power move for humans is community. And that it doesn't mean that, we have to be crammed in the same office and all that kind of stuff, or crammed in the same, commuter rails. It means enriching ourselves with collaboration, enriching ourselves with the inspiration and the camaraderie of others. And so to me, the coolest thing about working from home has been less of me not going to work and more about me inviting others to my house. And when we begin to think of it that way, we just begin to realize how important we are to each other and how much I miss you two. And you've been welcome to my house. I thought I had a great home office until I actually had to work in it. Then I realized it sucks. And so this is the best part of it. Yeah,
true.
No, my God, you guys gave such great answers to that. And I couldn't agree more that human aspect of people seeing, anyone that's going to be watching this is going to see the background, our homes, and a little bit about us, and especially for leaders like you two leading organizations, for your teams to see a little bit of personality. Not that they can't see that normally, but you know what I mean? Some of your personal, Cheryl has her beautiful flowers behind her, and Burt has an amazing hat collection that I'm surprised hasn't been brought out yet. But I think that also really does. There we go. I love it. I was wondering which one you were going to bring out. So fabulous. It's one of my favorites. But that kind of thing humanizes, the use of Zoom or technology when people are trying to have any kind of interpersonal relationship. So love it. Okay, well, first of all, I just want to say this has been an incredibly enlightening discussion, an inspirational discussion, to hear how you guys are handling everything going on in the world, how your firms are dealing with it. And I come away with this, and I hope our listeners do as well, with a sense of great hope and opportunity. But of course, I have to leave. If anybody knows me, they know I have quite a sense of humor, with a little bit of levity. And that would be not asking you some solve all the world's problems questions at the end, but a little bit about what is the first restaurant you both want to visit after the crisis has passed and it's okay to go out and actually have a dining experience, and what will you order? And I will start with Burt on this one, because I got to see him in the wig.
Yeah, I have a
Or you need a haircut.
Yeah, I do need one. I have a bucket full of hats and wigs, because these calls and these locations get overused. So, here would be my answer. I would jump on a plane. I'd head down to the British Virgin Islands. I'd wade into some beach bar on Joost Van Dyke. I'd order some cold brews, maybe pound some conch fritters. Because I got to tell you this, I actually don't have a taste so much for food. I actually have a taste for freedom and adventure right now, and that's the one that I probably do.
Love it. And Joost Van Dyke, awesome. One of my favorites.
Yep. So same thing. I don't think there's a restaurant I want to go to, but I do want to get on a plane, go to California, go see my family, and sit around my sister's pool and just have cold beer, maybe some margaritas, maybe the new White Claw watermelon, and just have a great time. So that's really that's what I can't wait to do.
That's great. Well, those are great answers. And in the meantime, we're going to have to do with our Zoom meetings, but they still mean so much to be able to see you guys, to know that you're doing well, that you're thriving in a difficult time. I want to thank you so much for being part of such an important discussion. I really hope that our listeners picked up some great best practices, some creative ideas, got inspired. Maybe this picked them up a little bit. Sometimes you need that throughout the day. And as I mentioned, this is our first part of a 3-part series. Our second part will be airing soon after this. And our special industry leader that will be joining us for that one is Eva Marie Schoenborn, the CEO of Northwestern Mutual's wealth management company. So again, thank you all so much. And hopefully we'll be able to toast together again soon. In the meantime, keep being creative.